Hey guys, picture this. It's 3 a.m. Rain is hammering the window like an impatient drummer, and you pry open a forgotten drawer to uncover a love letter soaked in coffee, faintly scented with wilted roses and a whisper of regret. Well, in the bustling agora of ancient Athens, the scent of fresh olives mingled with the tang of salt in the air as Thalia pored over her scrolls like a starving dog. Eyeing a juicy bone, the sun cast playful shadows across the marble tiles, illuminating mysterious symbols that spoke of a grand city lost to time, Atlantis. With every stroke of her feathered quill, excitement danced in her chest, thrumming like a lyre's string, tales of crystal palaces, and a civilization rich with wisdom whispered to her from the texts, igniting a fire she couldn't ignore. Just like the epic stories of brave heroes, she yearned to carve her own legend into the stones of history. But only if she could find the city first. Pressure right, she knew she couldn't face this daunting quest alone. So she enlisted the help of her childhood companion, Icarus, the fisherman, with a spirit as wild as the sea's untamed waves. Icarus, known for his daring escapades and the occasional romance with a siren spoiler alert. It didn't go well, was ready to swap his nets for compass and map as they stood on the edge of their serene coastal village, where the salty breeze ruffled their hair like an enthusiastic hairstylist. Thalia couldn't help but marvel at their impending adventure. Icarus leaned against a weather-beaten boat, grinning like a cat that just swallowed a canary, already picturing the fame they would garner. Atlantis. Just saying the name made the gulls squawk in envy as they hoisted the sail and felt the familiar pull of the wind. The world around them faded into a swirl of turquoise waves and frothy surf that crashed against the hull of their vessel. The horizon stretched endlessly, taunting them with uncharted territories and the promise of undiscovered wonders. With each gust, Thalia's heart beat a little faster, pounding a rhythm that echoed in her ears. The call of adventure became a siren song, and even Icarus, typically more interested in fish than folklore, felt the thrill thrumming in his veins. With the sea air swirling through her hair, Thalia imagined vibrant streets lined with merchants hawking their wares, while golden statues towered over crowds of citizens, all breathing life into the myth. For days they sailed, battling the tempests of the unpredictable Aegean, dodging the occasional marauding pirate. The proverbial haircut could wait. Thank you very much. They embraced the salty tang of the sea spray on their lips, and the ever-present thrill of the unknown wrapped around them like a familiar blanket. In the quiet moments, Icarus would share wild tales of his past exploits. Like that time, he mistook a massive octopus for an ancient sea monster, quickly learning that the octopus was less than pleased with being the star of his drama. Laughter filled the air, blending perfectly with the sounds of gulls screeching overhead, reminding them both that even on a quest for the fabled, joy lay in the journey itself. Yet underneath the light-hearted banter, an underlying tension crackled like static in the air. What if Atlantis was nothing more than a figment of imagination, a joke played upon scholars by the clever Greeks of old? The question hung between them, heavy like an anchor. Thalia, ever hopeful, traced her fingers over the worn parchment, detailing ancient hints of the city, feeling the rough weave of history rub against her skin. Little did they know, as they steered their small vessel toward the sunlit horizon, that their quest would soon dive deeper than waves, unraveling secrets that would challenge their beliefs and forge their destinies. A journey harder than assembling IKEA furniture without the instructions. Thalia and Icarus stood at the bow of their modest ship, the salt spray stinging their faces like tiny, angry bees as the rugged waves crashed around them. The Aegean Sea, with its frothy turquoise depths, transformed into a surging beast, roiling under a blanket of ominous clouds. Shouts from the crew, an eclectic mix of rugged sailors chasing glory and young dreamers clinging to hope, seemed drowned out by the thunderous claps that echoed like an angry god above. We're not on a reality show, folks. This is a quest, Icarus shouted, though the irony of the statement almost made him chuckle. Real quests rarely came with commercial breaks. Yet here they were, these two brave souls, determined to unveil the secrets of a city lost to time, even as their ship tossed like a toy in a bathtub full of chaos. As the storm brewed, the horizon darkened like a scene out of a horror play, and the sailors around them whispered tales of ill-fated journeys. Atlantis. More like can't not lose your lunch on this wavy thingosis. One grumbled, his laughter stark against the howling winds, but their laughter turned to gasps when monstrous waves, taller than any tale they'd heard, crashed over the ship, tossing them like rag dolls. In true dramatic fashion, with a mighty roar that rivaled Zeus himself, the ocean claimed their vessel, capsizing it like flipping a pancake at a breakfast contest gone awry. Thalia and Icarus plunged into the icy embrace of the abyss, fear clawing at their very souls as they fumbled in the raging waters. Just when despair began to gnaw at their courage, a figure emerged through the chaos. A mysterious old man, clad in tattered robes that billowed like sails caught in the wind, with the wisdom of 1,000 voyages etched into the lines of his face. He reached out a gnarled hand and plucked the pair from the clutches of the water, as if they were mere fish caught in a net. Breathe, young adventurers. You've not yet seen the wonders of the world. nor have you met your greatest challenges," he declared, his voice rich with earnestness, tinged with a hint of mischief that made Icarus suspect he was more than he seemed. With a wink that felt almost cinematic, he bestowed upon Thalia a charm that glinted like a treasure trove's guarded secret and promised protection. "Keep this close, dear girl. It will serve you well, just as my grandmother's meatloaf served us during winters with no fire." The old man's words hung in the air like a thick fog, blending with the scent of wet earth and brine that now tinged their clothes. Thalia clutched the charm tighter, feeling the cool metal pulse with an encouraging warmth, a startling contrast to the frigid water they had just escaped. As if on cue, the storm withdrew its fury, leaving behind a sea that shimmered with every color of the sunset, calm and inviting, but still teeming with uncertainty. So, did we just get saved by a sea guru, or the Aegean's version of Santa Claus? Icarus quipped, shaking the water from his hair while scanning the horizon with gritty determination. This encounter, however bizarre, lit a fire in their hearts. Their goal felt clearer than ever, even if they occasionally questioned their sanity. Because, let's make it clear, who searches for a mythical city anyway? With renewed purpose, Thalia and Icarus wiped the lingering salt from their eyes and steered their ship back toward the now calmly glimmering Aegean Sea, where every ripple seemed to whisper secrets of lost civilizations. The horizon stretched before them, a tapestry woven with shadows of doubt, yet imbued with the promise of adventure. A bittersweet dance that flickered like a candle's flame. They both knew the old man's warning wasn't just a whimsical tale spun by an eccentric. Dangers lurked, as did wonders they could only dream of. Their trials had just begun, but they would face storms, ridicule, and whatever lurked in the depths, all in the name of uncovering Atlantis, with a charming twist and plenty of grit. And with the protective charm at her side, Thalia felt an unshakable confidence, ready to explore, conquer, and laugh in the face of adversity, even if it meant wrestling with chaotic waves and the occasional sarcastic sailor. After weeks of battling waves and swatting away the odd seagull, Thalia and Icarus finally set foot on an island that felt like something out of a fever dream. Towering palm trees swayed as if they were starring in their own tropical soap opera, while the shimmering sands glistened like a treasure trove waiting to be uncovered. Ancient texts had whispered secrets of a lost city hidden beneath the waves, and here they were fist-bumping destiny. With hearts racing and a sprinkle of disbelief, the duo waded through the underbrush, caught in a dance of exhilaration and exhaustion that could only be rivaled by a particularly gripping episode of a reality show. But hey, who needed TV when nature's drama unfolded before them in technicolor glory. Before long, they stumbled upon the remnants of a civilization that once thrived, leaving behind hints of its vibrant past. Ruins materialized like ghosts of history, their intricate carvings wrapped in the embrace of colorful corals, as if the sea had conspired to paint them a new life. Each stone whispered stories of wisdom long forgotten, their surfaces covered in soft mosses and barnacles that crunched underfoot with every step. Icarus's eyes widened as he pointed out the crumbling pillars, their spirals almost teasing, like they were beckoning him closer. "I swear these ruins have better abs than I do," he mumbled, trying his best to compete with the rugged beauty of the sight. But no remarkable adventure is without its pitfalls, or spectral guardians in this case. As dusk dipped below the horizon, a chilling presence slithered through the air, palpable and powerful. Out from the shadows emerged ethereal figures, their translucent forms gliding through the ruins, draped in shrouds that seemed to ripple with the tide. Talk about dramatic entrance. These spectral gatekeepers weren't just here for ambience. They had a mission to protect the secrets of Atlantis from those unlucky or foolish enough to wander too close. Thalia felt a shiver run down her spine, the hairs on her arms standing in homage to the uncanny aura of the guardians. "So, you dare to tread where fools unwisely wander," one of the guardians boomed, its voice resonating with the echoes of the ocean. Thalia's heart raced faster than the latest social media trend, as she realized she would need to prove her worthiness to these spectral dudes, who clearly hadn't skipped leg day. The challenge was set. Solve the riddle stationed on the remnants of a coralline-crusted altar, or find herself eternally entangled in the city's haunting embrace. Thalia summoned every ounce of wit, each frustrated eye roll at cliched puzzles from childhood rising to the surface. The stakes were high, and failure would mean becoming one with the ruins. Talk about a real fixer-upper moment. With all the confidence of a cat teetering on a ledge, Thalia leaned forward, his heart pounding like a drum in a rock concert, and stared down the riddle. The guardians watched her keenly, their expressionless faces belying a hint of mischief, almost like this was all part of an intergalactic game show. In the cool evening air, the perfume of salt and adventure filled her lungs, sharpening her focus with every breath as she pieced together clues like some mythical crossword puzzle master. She couldn't help but think about how this moment might eventually land on TikTok. A blend of tension and triumph in the making. Triumph, of course, being the ultimate goal. Because let's be honest, being trapped in a ghost city wasn't on her bucket list. The air was thick with tension as Thalia stood before the guardians, their imposing figures cloaked in shadows that danced like phantoms in the flickering torchlight. Each guardian was a titan, their eyes glowing like coals in the night, challenging her to pique their interest, or perhaps to doom a city long lost to time. What is sought can be found, but only with the heart of a warrior, intoned the lead guardian, his voice echoing like thunder in the grand hall of Atlantis. Thalia's pulse quickened, the salty sea breeze mingling with the earthy scent of damp stone as she nervously rubbed her palms on her trousers, her mind whirling for a solution akin to a plot twist in a blockbuster movie. Just when she thought all was lost, she recalled an ancient proverb, a spark igniting within her. Knowledge is power, but wisdom keeps it safe. A lesson as valuable as the Mona Lisa behind bulletproof glass. The ground trembled beneath her feet, quaking like a rickety old roller coaster, a reminder that time was short and the ocean was already brewing with a fury. With each word she uttered, the walls seemed to lean in, eager for resolution, but also resistant, like a toddler refusing a nap. Thalia grasped the riddle's meaning as clarity flooded her mind. Atlantis wasn't just a city of marble and gold. It was a sanctuary, a utopia designed to safeguard enlightenment from the grasp of greed and the bloodlust of war. Beams of shimmering light burst through the cracks in the stone, illuminating intricate murals that told stories of harmony, art, and wisdom, as if the very walls were alive, whispering secrets that had been buried for millennia, moaning in anticipation of rediscovery. Just then, a loud crash echoed from the ocean, announcing the arrival of the tide, with the splash of an angry giant, pushing Thalia to act quickly or risk being swept away into myth and legend. As the guardians exchanged glances, the tension released, and a begrudging respect glimmered in their eyes like sunlight reflecting off a tranquil sea. They stepped aside, revealing a hidden chamber adorned with crystals that sparkled like the stars during an electric summer night, each one pulsating with unearthly energy. At the chamber's center lay the artifact, a device that looked somewhat like a giant, intricately designed compass. But instead of pointing north, it emanated an aura of destiny itself, pulling Thalia in like a moth to a flame. She felt a shiver dance along her spine, part fear, part exhilaration, realizing that she was about to grasp a piece of the past that could alter the course of mankind, a thought that was both thrilling and terrifying, like realizing one's favorite childhood superhero was actually a villain. Yet, as with all great treasures, it bore a heavy price, one that loomed like a dark shadow over the gleaming relic, whispering of choices yet to come. The guardians, in their rumbling voices, spoke of the cost. Wisdom gained demanded sacrifice, and choices made would echo through time like ripples in a pond. It wasn't a simple toll. It required one pure of heart to surrender something of profound importance, an anchor to their past wrapped in bittersweet nostalgia. Much like giving up your last box of pizza to a stranger in need, Thalia's heart raced, uncertainty swirling within her like a tornado ripping through a small town. As memories flashed, her childhood stories of adventure, her family, the warmth of home, all pulling her in opposite directions, like a tug of war gone digital. Yet, in that moment, Thalia felt the weight of destiny resting upon her shoulders like a warrior's armor bold, heavy, uncomfortable, yet undeniably empowering. With a determination fueled by the remnants of the lost city's legacy, she wrestled with the choice that loomed before her like a dragon threatening to burn down her resolve. In a clash of hope and apprehension, she stepped forward, her heart drumming a wild rhythm as she reached for the artifact, feeling its power swell beneath her fingertips. A bright flash erupted, blinding her for a heartbeat, followed by the awakening chorus of Atlantis itself, singing a song of ages past and futures unfulfilled. The scent of salt water mingled with the sweet aroma of blooming lotus flowers, wrapping around her like a shroud, urging her to make the right decision, to understand that knowledge without responsibility is a recipe for chaos, no different than letting a cat play with a can opener. Thalia gripped the artifact tighter, realizing that she wasn't merely seeking a precious memory. She was at the precipice of shaping a new world against the backdrop of an ancient narrative where every choice could either save or sink humanity. With a last glance toward the Guardians, who now wore expressions of expectation mixed with awe, she knew that the heart of Atlantis beat louder with each breath she took, echoing with the undeniable truth she was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the crumbling ruins of Atlantis, a city drowned in mystery and lore. Thalia clutched the ancient artifact, its surface shimmering like the scales of an iridescent fish, as Icarus paced beside her, his thoughts racing like the waves that had swallowed their beloved city. Did they really want to upend the delicate balance of knowledge and ignorance? After so many years of searching, of dodging sea monsters and bureaucratic red tape, here they were at a crossroads. What if we just call Hollywood? They could make a blockbuster out of this. Icarus joked, holding back laughter, while the weight of a millennia pressed on them both like a smothering blanket of seaweed, both unsettling and oddly comforting in its embrace. Each cracked stone of the city spoke of a vibrant past, echoing with whispers of wisdom and warnings long buried beneath the tuneful sounds of the ocean tides. The salty air was thick with the scent of aged coral and the faint trace of something that might have been ambrosia, or perhaps just an old fish trap. It was exhilarating, all while terrifying. Thalia's heart swelled with a mingled feeling of betrayal and duty. They could reveal Atlantis to the world, a luxurious buffet of knowledge and adventure. Yet, they also knew that would invite greed, taking the city from a storied legend to a theme park, where tourists could play pretend with lazy seagulls. The irony wasn't lost on her. Instagram would ruin Atlantis before it had a chance to breathe again. Underneath the swirling currents of excitement and anxiety, a resolute determination began to brew. Thalia and Icarus exchanged glances that spoke directly to their souls. With a slight nod, they accepted their fate. It was not just the city that must be honored, but the very essence of what it represented. After all, the real treasure wasn't glittering gold nor magical crystals. It was the wisdom that flowed through the cracked pathways of its submerged streets, like a river of forgotten truths waiting to be unearthed. Together, they vowed to protect the sanctity of Atlantis, burying her secrets deeper than any treasure hunter would dare to dive, drowning exploitation in a tide of respect and reverence. As they prepared to leave, the setting sun splashed the skyline with colors that would make a dozen artists weep. Crimson, violet, and orange hues flickered across the surface of the waves, each one a painting no one would ever see. The atmosphere buzzed with a peculiar mix of accomplishment and melancholy as they covered the ruins, cloaking them in weeds and rocks like a secret best kept under wraps. There you go, Atlantis, nice and cozy, just how you like it. Icarus laughed, attempting to lighten the mood, but the ghostly ruins only seemed to sigh in response, as if appreciative of their commitment. With one last look at the hidden city, they turned away, hearts heavy yet lifted by a sense of purpose that felt more profound than any selfie opportunity could provide. Finally, they arrived home heavily armed with stories and lessons learned beneath waves that had long forgotten their sweetness. As they shared their adventures with the world, they found themselves overwhelmed with a peculiar nostalgia for the future. A future where the echoes of Atlantis could mold humanity into something better. Imagine if ancient wisdom was the new black, Thalia exclaimed, channeling her inner fashionista. Armed with the wisdom of the past, they strode into a new age, eager to reshape the modern world, not into a Davy Jones's locker, but rather a vibrant tapestry woven from the threads of our shared history. The legacy of Atlantis, buried but unbroken, became their guiding star, a way of life ensuring that the lessons of old would be etched not just in memory, but in action. In the heart of London, 1940, was a symphony of chaos, where the haunting wails of air raid sirens sliced through the smoke-stained sky like knives. Aliner, a spirited young woman with fiery red hair that danced in the wind, stood on a bustling street corner, her heart pounding as she watched men march away, uniforms crisp and spirits high. It was a strange irony. These brave lads were heading off to war, while she and her friend Ruth were left to make sandwiches for them. The city was a mix of fear and fortitude. Shops boarded up their windows, while the scent of burning coal hung like a thick fog, reminding everyone that danger lurked in every corner. But amidst this unease, a spark ignited within Aliner. She refused to be sidelined while others fought for their country's future. It was time for her, and women like her, to step into the fray, if only in their own unique way. Ruth, on the other hand, was no stranger to grease and machinery. She could fix a car as easily as she could change a light bulb, skills her father had instilled in her during those long, rainy afternoons. With oil-stained hands and a mischievous grin, she leaned against a rusted toolbox, her eyes twinkling with mischief as she imagined what the WAAF would be like. "We'll show them," she declared, her voice daring and bold, much like the heroines of the silver screen, though without the glamorous hairdos, of course. "It's time to give our coffee makers a break and start handling some actual hardware." The air buzzed with excitement as they stepped into a world that was mostly off-limits to women, a world of airplanes, engines, and perhaps a little bit of rebellion. All at once, they were more than just bystanders. They were poised to take their place in the annals of history, one wrench at a time. With their decision made, they stood in line at the recruitment office, the scent of damp paper mingling with nervous sweat as they awaited their turn. The room was filled with the chatter of camaraderie, laughter bubbling up as if to drown out the dread of an uncertain future. Aliner could feel the butterflies in her stomach, flapping madly like they had just been set free from a jar. But she squared her shoulders with resolve. She scanned the faces around her, each woman adorned with different stories and backgrounds, yet united under a singular purpose. There were no delusions of grandeur here. They were aware that their contributions wouldn't always be recognized, but brave hearts often thrived on quiet victories, didn't they? They were the unsung heroines, the whispers in the war, determined to carve their names into a gritty reality that would forever change the world. As the days rolled on, the training camp echoed with the sounds of laughter and the slap of canvas against skin, the unmistakable perfume of sweat mingling with the sharp tang of aviation fuel. Aliner and Ruth, alongside their fellow recruits, scrambled to keep up with the rigorous drills, while secretly chortling at the clumsiness that came with unfamiliar equipment. I think I'm more likely to take down a Spitfire with my hammer than fly one. Alina joked, her laugh ringing out across the tarmac as she fumbled with tools that felt alien in her grasp. Yet through every misstep and giggle, their resolve hardened like iron. Each blunder was merely a stepping stone toward the future. The transformation from naive women into empowered warriors was slowly happening right under the constant thundering of the skies where bombs fell, and hope flickered like a candle in a tempestuously dark room. With each passing moment, the women of the WAAF were shaping their destiny, not by waiting for permission, but by charging fearlessly into the fray. They became the backbone of the war effort, often overlooked yet integral, keeping the skies secure while men were fighting on distant fronts. Alina had often dreamed of being the star in a Hollywood film, but here she was living a story more profound, one filled with grit, perseverance, and a dash of humor, where every engine repaired was a silent scream against oppression. They were not wearing capes, but this band of sisters was unmistakably superhuman, proving that you don't need a uniform or a title to be a hero. As the city roared around them, they were no longer mere whispers. They were the thunder that would echo through history, fueling a revolution that would shape generations to come. As Alina and Ruth trod the sodden grounds of the WAAF base, a cloud of uncertainty loomed over their resolve. The scent of oil mixed with damp earth clung to the air, and the cacophony of engines roaring to life felt like a daunting symphony. Alina, with her keen eyes and quick fingers, was set to become a signal operator, decoding the Morse of enemy movements like a magician reading the cards. Yet, despite her cunning skills, the men around her often treated her presence as an afterthought, like the dog that always followed but rarely deserved a treat. It was as if the glorious wartime camaraderie only applied to those with trousers and a swagger, leaving her to navigate a world stitched together by threads of both valor and vexation. Meanwhile, Ruth had a passion for grease and metal that stirred even the most indifferent hearts. She wielded wrenches and screwdrivers with the same finesse that chefs wielded knives. It was an art form in the chaos of machinery. The whirring and clattering of aircraft engines surrounded her like a battle hymn, as she deftly maneuvered under the sprawling wings of a Spitfire. But even as she tightened bolts and honed her craft, she sensed the lingering gaze of derision from male mechanics who just couldn't wrap their heads around a woman getting her hands dirty. It was ironic, of course, that the very machines they relied on were the result of women's ingenuity. But glory was still a sport reserved for the boys, leaving Ruth to assert her worth with every confident twist of a wrench. In the midst of metal and Morse code, Alina discovered her heart tangled in the sweet yet aching conundrum of love. James, that dashing pilot with a grin that could melt steel, was everything a girl could dream of, and a whole lot more. Each time he sauntered by, his uniform crisp and air of bravado unmistakable, Alina felt butterflies draft, dodging her stomach. But the bitter taste of fear lingered. What if he became another casualty to the war's insatiable hunger? The irony of falling for a man who might soon take to the skies, leaving her with nothing but echoes of laughter, gnawed at her heart like a persistent pest. The evenings in the barrack were a riot of emotions, where camaraderie mixed with unspoken fears. Alina and Ruth would share stories, half-heartedly laughing over the absurdity of their assignments, while fending off the notion that their contributions were anything less than essential. They laughed over cups of steamy tea, the warmth from the mugs almost rivaling the simmering frustration they felt toward their colleagues' dismissive attitudes. Ruth often quipped that their uniforms should come with capes stamped with superwomen. But alas, all they had were skirts, trousers, and an urgency to prove that battle doesn't only rage with guns and planes. In those moments, with the scent of tea and coal smoke swirling around them, they found solace in shared strength. The silent battles waged in their hearts, just as formidable as any skirmish outside. As dawn broke over the airstrip, the roar of engines rose like a call to arms, awakening Alina from her tumultuous dreams. She swallowed the bittersweet notion that her affection for James echoed in a battlefield of uncertainty. Every time she watched him spiral into the sky, she felt an unsettling mix of pride and panic, a dance as dizzying as the aerial dogfights they trained for. Every goodbye felt like a pendulum swinging, a relentless reminder that love was as perilous as war itself. Yet, amidst the trials of the heart, Alina embraced every fleeting moment, understanding that in the shadow of the battlefield, the bravery of their silent struggles birthed a fierce resilience, the kind of spirit that could weather any storm. As black clouds loomed on the horizon, signaling the gathering storm, the air crackled with tension at the WAAF headquarters. Alina sat at her desk, the smell of burnt toast wafting from the communal kitchen, mixing uneasily with the sharp scent of paper and ink. News had come in of a new mission, a desperate attempt to thwart enemy aircraft intent on raining chaos over Britain. Each transmission that buzzed through the crackling radio set was a chance to stand up for the nation, and Alina could feel the weight of the world resting on her shoulders. She straightened her cap, her heart racing like a vintage car on a racetrack, ready to tackle whatever came her way. Little did she know This mission would take her far beyond the realm of her ordinary duties, with her fingers flying over the keys like a pianist at a pressing concert. Alina plunged into the responsibility of decoding enemy messages. The jumbled letters and numbers were like a foreign language, strange, elusive, and utterly fascinating. Hours stretched into one another in the dim glow of the lamp, her eyes straining as she deciphered the secret codes, each breakthrough giving her a rush akin to finding the last slice of cake at a party. She felt a thrill like she was navigating through the pages of a spy novel, where she was no longer just a supporting character. She was the hero, wielding information that could save countless lives. But as Alina translated the codes, whispers began to circulate through the barracks, like the fluttering of moths drawn to an unguarded flame. The unsettling chatter hinted at the presence of spies within their ranks, twisting the camaraderie into a knot of suspicion. Women who had once shared lunch and laughter now exchanged wary glances, their smiles dimming like lights flickering in a storm. Just when Alina thought she was locking in on the enemy through the messages, she had to navigate the minefield of distrust building between her fellow wafts. It was ironic. Their sanctuary had suddenly morphed into a battleground, where dishonor might lurk behind a friendly face. Beneath the din of daily drills, the fabric of Alina's life began to fray. Her stomach churned. The clattering of aluminum trays in the mess hall sounded like ominous warnings, and sleep was a fleeting ghost. Each night, as she prepared to lie down, her dreams became trenches of anxiety, filled with shadows whispering doubts. Were they truly all on the same side? The laughter that once echoed through the hallways now felt like a distant echo, replaced by the thudding reminder of secrecy and fear. And yet, amid the tension, Alina clung to hope like a sailor, searching for land amidst a tempest, convinced that unveiling the truth could solidify their unity against a common enemy. Amid the chaos, Alina's resolve tightened like a spring, fueling her unyielding spirit. She was no longer just a cog in a machine. She had transformed into a crucial element of resistance against an invisible foe. On days when the world outside felt like a war movie gone awry, her role felt almost heroic, a blend of Wonder Woman and J. Edgar Hoover. If Hoover had a knack for decoding ciphers, so she pushed through, deciphering each coded message with renewed determination, knowing that with each letter she cracked, she was one step closer to not only saving lives, but reclaiming the trust among her comrades. The gathering storm may have cast shadows over their heads, but Alina's mission was a beacon of hope, a call to arms shrouded in silence, forging strength from the most unexpected places. Under the cover of darkness, the airbase buzzed like a hornet's nest, disturbed by a child. Shadows slipped through the thick night air, cloaking the soldiers in a veil of adrenaline and fear. Alina stood by the radio, her heart racing like a dial-up modem connecting to the world. Just then, the sound of air raid sirens screamed through the night, mixing the acrid scent of burning fuel with the earthy smell of damp soil. In a matter of seconds, chaos erupted like popcorn popping in a microwave, and the clatter of boots on concrete replaced tranquil silence. As planes overhead roared like angry giants, ready to meddle with fate, Alina knew she had to keep her head in the fray. After all, bravery wasn't just for the guys flying bombers. It was a team sport, and she was determined to play her part. Just as the first explosions rattled the rafters, Alina's mind raced with calculations, plotting the locations of enemy movements in the chaos. The fierce crackle of gunfire sliced through the air, mingling with the dull thud of bodies hitting the ground. It was like a twisted game of chess, where the pawns were all stressed-out women, and the stakes were higher than a live concert ticket to see the Beatles. Amidst the chaos, Alina relayed vital intelligence over the radio, her voice steady as a metronome, contrasting the pandemonium that enveloped her. Every word was a beacon, lighting the way for her comrades, fighting against an unseen enemy, lurking like horror movie villains in the shadows. Then came a bone-chilling scream that curdled the air, slicing through Alina's focused thoughts. Ruth, brave and tireless, was sprawled beneath the wreckage of a damaged airplane, her breaths shallow and uneven. Just imagine being caught between the wings of a metaphorical Iron Man and feeling anything but invincible. It could add a whole new meaning to the term, crushed. Panic surged through Alina as she heard that sound, the unmistakable soundtrack of a sister in distress. For a brief moment, the world slowed, and she wrestled with the orders blaring in her ear to stay put. But Alina wasn't one for following rules that would see her friend left behind. She was a warrior in a dress, time to save the day. With heart pounding like a drum solo at a rock concert, Alina sprinted toward the wreckage, dodging debris and the fire's bitter breath. The heat assaulted her senses, and the acrid smell of smoke clawed at her lungs. But nothing would stop her. If this was a race against time, she was running the marathon. As she reached Ruth, time felt like a slippery fish as Alina dug through the jagged metal like some kind of life-saving archaeologist. She could hear the distant hum of engines and the cries of wounded soldiers, but they became background noise to the main event. Her friend. With each lift of twisted metal, hope flickered. It was the kind of moment that made you want to scream at the sky like a superhero fighting for justice, knowing full well that reality was a complicated battlefield Finally, with one last effort, Alina freed Ruth, who coughed up the remnants of smoke and fear like a kickback of a forceful slap from life itself. The bond between them felt like an unbreakable chain forged in the fires of war and cemented by unyielding friendship. As they lay on the ground, caught in their own disbelief and exhaustion, Ruth chuckled despite the pain. I guess we can add demolition expert to our resumes. In that absurdity, amidst the destruction and chaos, the spirit of camaraderie shone like a beacon of light, proving women were not just sitting on the sidelines, but were front and center, fighting tooth and nail to protect one another. Beneath the ashes of war, resilience and kinship rose, displaying the true tapestry of bravery that might never see the history books, but resonated in the hearts of those who lived it. As the echoes of the bomb raids faded into a haunting silence, Alina and Ruth stood among the rubble, transformed from ordinary women into unsung champions of resilience. Dust swirled around them like ghosts of fallen soldiers, carrying whispers of loss and courage. Alina, with her tousled hair streaked with ash, clutched a worn photograph of James, the love she lost in the chaos as she fought tears. Ruth, ever the steadfast comrade, nudged Alina, reminding her that heroes come in many forms. If we're gonna be brave, Ruth said, flashing that bright, defiant grin, might as well outshine the sun. And that glimmer of hope, mixed with the acrid odor of smoke and iron, tang of blood, sparked a fire that not even the darkest nights could extinguish. With the ink of war still fresh on their hands, Alina and Ruth rallied their fellow compatriots, igniting a flame that flickered brightly in the dull gray of despair. Women, once relegated to sewing circles and kitchen duties, found themselves banding together like warriors in a daring heist, except their target was recognition and change. As the words, "We can do it," echoed through the cramped dormitories, a blazing optimism began to spread, chasing away the bleakness that had settled like a weight on their chests. Alina looked out at the faces illuminated by candlelight, each a tapestry of determination and fear, and she knew they could rewrite the narrative of this war. With every step, every laborious task they performed, they boldly declared that victory was not just for the men in uniform, but for every woman who worked, fought, and sacrificed silently behind the scenes. Alina transformed her pain into purpose, pouring her soul into documenting the stories of women who had been mere shadows beneath the headlines. She penned letters and filled notebooks with the raw realities, the scent of gunpowder clinging to their clothes, the anguished cries of displaced families, and the camaraderie found in makeshift shelters. Ironically, it was amidst the chaos that they discovered their own strength, like the resilient dandelions pushing through cracks in the concrete. as she scribbled late into the night. The ink mingled with tears, but each drop represented a refusal to let history forget the valiant contributions of women. If only she could have a half hour with Hollywood's elite for a movie pitch. Wonder Women. The untold stories. She chuckled to herself. Hearts and fists raised in pride as she imagined the splash of a major red carpet moment. Weeks turned into months, and with Alina and Ruth leading the charge, the tide began to turn, not just in the war, but in the societal perceptions gripping women's roles. Betwixt factories and hospitals, women sweated bullets, literally and figuratively, as they went to work in mechanic overalls and nurse uniforms, their bravery becoming as infectious as a catchy tune on the radio. The streets buzzed with the lively chatter of women reclaiming their narratives, sharing tales of how they built planes while dodging snide comments and side-eye glares. Alina often mused that if only their courage could be bottled, they could fuel every engine in the fleet. And indeed, their spirit grew stronger, enveloping the world, shifting minds, as people began to understand that while heroes wear many capes, sometimes they wear aprons too. Finally, the day dawned when Alina and Ruth stood before a gathering of veterans, both men and women, held in a town hall rich with history, but starved for acknowledgement. The air crackled with electric anticipation, and Alina found herself gripping the podium, her heart thumping louder than any bomb blast. "These ladies," she began, eyes bright with determination, "have shown us that valor isn't just a man's game." Chuckles and murmurs rippled through the crowd, punctuated by knowing nods. The applause that followed was thunderous, washing over them like a wave, each clap like a pat on the back that said, "You matter." With eyes on the future, Alina and Ruth forged ahead, vowing that the stories of women in war would no longer linger in the shadows, but flourish in the sunlight of honor they so richly deserved. In the lush, emerald highlands of what we now call Colombia, a potpourri of tribes began to stir. These weren't just any tribes. They were the seeds of the Muisca Confederation, sprouting from rich, volcanic soil like a well-watered garden. Picture a world where the air buzzes with the chatter of bustling markets, where the smell of freshly harvested maize mingles with the earthy scent of the mountains after a rain. Here, every sunrise painted the horizon gold, an omen perhaps of the treasures that awaited talented hands and intuitive minds. In this vibrant tapestry, fields of corn danced with the wind, as lush valleys echoed with the sounds of laughter and the murmur of trade, weaving a complex story of unity among the tribes. Enter Bachika, a figure not unlike your favorite mythic quest giver in a fantasy video game. This wise leader, clad in robes that flutter like the wings of divine birds, embodied a vision that was as grand as it was benevolent. Sent by the heavens, he strolled among the people, imparting wisdom like a wise old sage whose beard catches the light in just the right way. Only this sage could command thunder and rain, but don't picture him sitting in a cozy, dimly lit tavern. No, he roamed the hills, blessing crops and guiding his people through natural disasters that could rival the worst scenes of a disaster flick, reflecting the chaos and beauty of his surroundings. Bachika became a beacon of hope, lifting spirits while tackling the daunting challenges of changing weather and defiant rivalries lurking in the shadows. Now, not all was sunshine and rainbows in the Muisca Confederation. Enter Zipictonal, the ambitious chief whose dreams of power and glory were as bold as a pop star's ego during a world tour, fueled by visions of unification. He charmed neighboring tribes like a snake oil salesman at a county fair, weaving colorful tales of alliances that promised wealth and security. Imagine him standing atop a rocky cliff, wind whipping through his hair like a dramatic music video montage, rallying his people with grand proclamations that made them feel invincible until the next rival tribe ambushed them. Of course, Zipictonal's hunger for dominance danced dangerously close to the flames of chaos, and you could almost hear the collective gulp from the tribes each time he spoke of expansion. With life in full swing, the Muisca Confederation climbed the ladder of prosperity with both grace and peril. The agricultural landscape burgeoned, transformed into a patchwork quilt of vibrant crops that sang of hard work and unyielding spirit. You could almost taste the sweet yucca as fields swayed gently, while the cool, crisp mountain air filled lungs with the promise of new beginnings. But nature can be a fickle mistress, swinging from nurturing rains to droughts that made the earth crack like an old pair of sandals. The people, ever resilient, learned to adapt their methods, using intricate irrigation systems that would make a modern environmentalist raise an impressed eyebrow. Thus unfolds the story of the Muisca Confederation, a vivid saga woven with ambition, wisdom, and the relentless spirit of its people. As roots sunk deeper and alliances formed like an intricate dance of partners, this rising civilization crafted a unique identity that thrived amid challenges. Amidst the tension, the clever trade agreements and ritzy goldsmithing shone with a power that glittered in every marketplace. Voices rose in joyous harmony at festivals that filled the air with the sweet fragrance of roasting meats and fresh fruits, and amid the laughter, loyalty thrummed like a heartbeat, reminding each individual of the beautiful mosaic they were creating together. Like an unbreakable bond forged in the heat of history's furnace, as the Muisca Confederation expanded like a wild river, overflowing its banks. The shimmering dream of unity began to muddle with darker tides. The unyielding vision of Zipictunnel clashed like a thunderstorm with Bochica's teachings, which preached harmony and peace. It was as if a child had decided to paint with splashes of mud right on the walls of a pristine temple. With every prophetic word from Zipictunnel, the seeds of discontent sprouted in hearts once faithful, turning allies into wary strangers and brothers, into bickering rivals. The air, thick with tension, smelled of smoke from cooking fires and the faint metallic tang of rising conflict. As whispers of doubt echoed through the village squares like a dissonant song on repeat. But just when you thought it couldn't get messier, enter Funza, the ambitious warlord, a figure reminiscent of a villain straight out of a Renaissance fair. He saw this brewing chaos not as a storm to weather, but as a ripe opportunity to exploit. Like a sly fox in a henhouse, he fanned the flames of distrust among the clans, sowing rumors with the deftness of a bard spinning tales over a campfire. Each skirmish he orchestrated was a beat in a bloody dance, a frenzied beat that would make even the most hardened warriors clutch their swords tighter. With the scent of betrayal wafting through the fields and the thrill of power in the air, Funza reveled in the madness he meticulously crafted, his eyes glinting with the promise of dominion. The once lofty ideals of the Confederation began to feel as distant as the stars on a cloudy night. Greed, that pesky little gremlin, whispered sweet nothings into the ears of those whose hearts had once been anchored in Bochica's noble teachings. It was a cruel irony that the very ambitions meant to elevate them led them down a murky path of division. Like a game of musical chairs gone awry, alliances shifted and cracked underfoot, causing unexpected tumbles and bruised egos. The smell of sweat and determination hung in the air as clashes erupted, painting the earth with the stark reds and browns of conflict. Each burst of violence, a tragic betrayal of the unity they once cherished. And yet, even amidst the chaos, pockets of resilience flickered to life like stubborn campfires in the dark. There were those who clung to the spirit of Bochica, rallying to ignite a resistance, their voices a melody of hope against the cacophony of war drums. Their chants resonated through the valleys like an old-school rock anthem, urging the tribes to dig deep into their roots and remember what truly mattered. The aroma of communal feasts hung in the air, an enticing reminder of shared heritage, bonding the staunchest of foes under the same sky. But was it enough? As the rattle of swords and the cries of the wounded echoed, each heart raced heavier toward an uncertain fate. As the Confederation teetered on the brink of collapse, the dance between ambition and unity grew dangerously exhilarating, much like a high-stakes game of Jenga. Will the Muisca find a way to stitch together the frayed tapestry of their alliance? Or will Funza's nefarious plans lead them down a path of irrevocable ruin? The winds howled like angry spirits, carrying the scent of hope and despair alike. A potent reminder that even in the direst of times, the sweetest fruit can grow from the most barren soil. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the land, the true battle for supremacy began, not just over territory, but for the very soul of the Confederation itself. And who knows, perhaps even the great Sipektonal would learn that sometimes a little humility can rewrite the narrative in ways no one ever expected. Picture this. The sun hangs low over the green hills of the Muisca Confederation, casting a golden glow that feels almost magical. If only the blooming flowers and chirping birds could forget about the imminent doom. Tension crackles in the air as two prominent leaders, Bachika and Sipektonal, stand on opposite sides of a political chessboard, each clutching their pawns like they're planning to win a national championship. The once unified tribe is now split, teetering precariously on the edge of war, a spectacle reminiscent of an ancient soap opera full of drama and betrayal. With each passing day, their heated arguments ignite like a bonfire, spreading flickers of doubt among the Muisca people. The sky feels heavier with that eternal question. How did they get to this point of division? Alas, the fragile alliances begin to fracture, and trust evaporates like morning mist under the unforgiving sun. You see Funza's forces, lurking like cunning foxes in the underbrush, smell blood. The kind that makes a predator giddy, seizing the golden opportunity. They launch a series of audacious raids that resonate like a horror movie soundtrack, striking fear in the hearts of the Muisca. Villagers awaken to the echoing clash of spears and the rancid odor of smoke, while their once proud unity crumbles into dust. Oh, the irony. A people once bonded by strength now find themselves fighting against dwindling trust, while the enemy celebrates their disarray like it's a carnival. With each raid, the beauty of their crafted alliances transforms into a bitter joke. The kind that's funny until it's not. Picture villagers whispering tales of betrayal beneath the starry night sky, where stories that once united them become ominous warnings. The smells of roasted maize and the vibrant colors of ceremonial garments fade into stark reminders of lost unity. Trust, which once flowed like rivers through their shared history, now runs dry, replaced by whispers of who might betray whom, like a game of musical chairs gone horribly wrong. As the echoes of laughter turn into murmurs of panic, the Muisca Confederation stands at a crossroads, the path to peace or the looming shadow of ruin. In the throes of chaos, love takes a backseat to survival. The Muisca people are now on a high-stakes treasure hunt for loyalty, desperately trying to gather what pieces they can amidst the turmoil. One can almost hear the grim irony of their situation as they realize they're losing more than just land. They are losing the cultural threads that weave their identities into one colorful tapestry. The clashes grow more desperate, and the clash of metal echoes in the valleys, leaving behind a lingering metallic taste in the air, like biting into a rusty nail. With every skirmish, it becomes painfully clear that this isn't merely a fight for land or power. It's a battle for the very soul of the Confederation itself. Who knew that fragile alliances could shatter like glass underfoot when pushed by the relentless tide of greed and ambition? And so, as the sun sets behind the jagged mountains, casting long shadows over the fading unity of the Muisca people, they stand at a pivotal moment in history, a crossroads of glory or despair. Laughter gives way to the apprehensive silence of uncertainty, and the air thickens with the scent of impending doom. The leaders, once heralded as champions of unity, are now transformed into characters in a tragedy of their own making. The question looms larger than life. Will they find their footing before they plunge into the abyss of oblivion? Or will the rich legacy of the Muisca Confederation slip through their fingers like grains of sand, leaving nothing but echoes in the hearts of future generations? It was at Guatavita, a place where the air crackled with tension, that the Muisca Confederation gathered for what would be their final stand. The day was drenched in ethereal light, golden rays spilling through thick clouds like divine, spotlighting their moment of need. Warriors draped in colorful tunics lined the sacred lake, the water shimmering beneath the sun, while the scent of damp earth mingled with the sweet fragrance of wildflowers, turning the battlefield into an almost mystical canvas. But underneath this enchanting facade, a palpable worry tugged at their hearts, as uncertainty crept in like a thief in the night. What's next? A dragon attack? One warrior joked darkly, only to earn disapproving glares from his comrades. The stakes were far too high for laughter. This was a fight for survival. At the heart of this desperate struggle stood Bachika, their revered figure, summoning the sun's power like a sorcerer wielding a fiery staff. The echoes of his voice rang out, a rallying cry that carried hope like a fragile candle flickering in the dark. He raised his arms to the heavens, and for a moment the sky seemed to respond, as if the cosmos itself was leaning in to observe this consequential clash. The warriors' hearts surged with courage, fueled by faith and glowing intentions. But little did they know, betrayal lurked just around the corner, lurking in dark shadows, ready to shred their dreams like wet paper. How tragically ironic, as Bachika called on the gods, it was a fellow man who would snuff out the light as the conflict erupted with bone-rattling intensity. Clanging swords and war cries filled the air, drowning out the once peaceful sounds of nature that had cradled their sacred site. The lake, which had seen countless rituals, now bore witness to chaos, reflecting a surreal blend of chaos and beautiful tragedy. But amidst the clamor of battle, whispers of treachery slithered through the ranks. Allies became foes. Fear turned friends into backstabbers faster than you could say Game of Thrones. The moments that followed unfolded like the unraveling of a complicated tapestry, each strand representing the hopes of a community, now hanging by a fraying thread. By sunset, the battlefield transformed into a symphony of loss. The wounded lay crumpled like discarded dolls, while cries of anguish echoed against the breathtaking mountains surrounding them. The sun dipped below the horizon, bleeding hues of crimson and gold that mixed with the somber reminders of what once was. Fellowship fell apart faster than a pop star's marriage. Alliances cracked under pressure like dry earth desperate for rain. The Muisca's heartbeat, once vibrant and united, began to falter. One can almost hear the mocking ghost of destiny laughing like a giddy child on a merry-go-round, as dreams of unity fell away like autumn leaves, crisp and hollow underfoot. As darkness engulfed Guatavita, the sacred site echoed with a sorrowful silence, a void where laughter and life had once thrived. The moon rose, casting its silver glow on a broken confederation, like a spotlight on a stage after the final curtain call, leaving the audience in stunned disbelief. The dreams, hopes, and alliances that had flourished now lay in ruins, rendered cold by betrayal and the fickle hand of fate. In that grave stillness, those who remained felt a crushing weight bearing down on their chests. The Muisca Confederation, once a beacon of strength, now found itself scattered like ashes in the wind, leaving behind only the fragmented memories of what had been, echoing through the ages like a haunting melody lost in time. Years drifted by like clouds in the sky, and what was once the mighty Muisca Confederation now echoed through the valleys as mere whispers. The golden treasures that once sparkled like the stars above the Andes had turned into cold, forgotten artifacts, resting in the dusty corners of the past. New tribes settled in the land, each with their own legends, stories, and the occasional bumpy skip of a comic relief moment. Think of them as the new tenant using your old couch, but insisting It's now retro, while the Muisca's shimmering gold became a distant memory. Its significance glimmered like residual sunlight on a foggy morning, hinting at the grandeur that had once been, and then vanished, as if it had slipped through time's fingers like sand. As elders passed around tales of old, their eyes twinkled with mischief, tattoos of history inked deep into their memories, filled with the heady scent of adventure and ambition that hung in the air like the aroma of fresh bread from the village baker's oven on a Sunday morning, hinting at the flour and water mix that makes life rise and thrive. Amidst the rustling leaves, the air carried the memorable wisdom of Bachika, the revered teacher who had once walked among the Muisca. His stories twined into the fabric of daily life, children playing in sun-dappled fields eagerly gathered round as elders' voices bore the weight of ancient knowledge. Choose unity over ambition, they would advise with the gravity of Hector facing Achilles, and the playful spark of Yoda sharing wisdom with the Jedi. Each lesson, a scalpel slicing through folly, urged future generations to reflect on the cyclical nature of success and downfall, highlighting how even the mightiest can stumble like an awestruck fan meeting their celebrity crush and not knowing what to say. The lessons lingered in the air, as if the ghost of Bachika himself floated among the grassy knolls, strumming a harp made from the laughter of those who came together and fell apart with time's gentle, yet relentless hands. But what irony washed over the land, as these stories, once soaked in the richness of the Golden Age, now fluttered away like autumn leaves caught in a careless breeze. The thick fog of history nestled into the valleys, wrapping around blossoming flowers that knew nothing of what had transpired. Young warriors, adorned with feathers that rustled like the soft whispers of their ancestors, readied themselves for battles against rival tribes. Their preparation was equal parts bravado and comedy, like a nature show where a deer triumphantly throttles a lion's narrative. And yet, despite their preoccupations with glory, the lessons of the past were woven into the very heart of their village, reminding them that grandeur without wisdom is just a glittering folly, and they might end up as yet another ghost in a land washed clean by the greedy tides of time. The sweeping landscapes echoed with the cries of children, their innocent laughter juxtaposed against the weight of history laid before them like the backdrop of a dark fantasy film. They played war games, reenacting the unions and disagreements of the past Muisca, swinging make-believe swords fashioned from sticks and dreams. Yet, in the eyes of their guardians, the cautionary tales loomed like shadows, urging them to recognize that the past, no matter how far-fetched, is still the foundation of their present. Much like how teenagers transform cringeworthy high school drama into nostalgia years later. The elders often chuckled as they watched the young ones, remembering their own youthful exuberance marinated in the ambition of bygone days. Full of desires to carve their names into history, as if it were made of soft clay waiting for ingenious sculptors. It was all a grand performance beneath the azure sky, a mix of hilarity and solemnity, the stage set for the next act in a never-ending play, where everyone was both the protagonist and the ghost of someone who came before. And as the sun dipped below the rolling hills, the hues of orange and purple swirling together like the spirits of those who once thrived, the weight of the lost civilization settled like a cloak over the valley. Each breath held the taste of bittersweet remembrance. The nostalgia hung thick in the air, permeated by the sense of earth and the soft, alluring call of the wind. Here, in this verdant cradle, echoes of the Muisca Confederation continued to ripple through time, a permanent reminder that glory and grief danced hand in hand. Much like a well-rehearsed tango, unite ambition with wisdom, and be wary of the seductive shimmer of golden dreams. It can fool the most discerning eyes, much like a pop star's flashy outfit hiding the same old song. The sands of time shift, sometimes gently, sometimes as tumultuously as a storm. Yet the tales remain, stoked by laughter and tears, urging new generations to listen carefully, lest they become echoes of the past themselves. In the bustling heart of Constantinople, where the air hummed with the chatter of merchants and wafted the fragrant spices from the local bazaars, young Alexios navigated the vivid tapestry of life around him. He was a scholar with a head full of dreams and a heart yearning for knowledge, desperately wanting to unearth the mysteries of Byzantine culture. The sun cast playful shadows between the grand columns of the Hagia Sophia, an architectural marvel that felt like a heavenly embrace as the light danced within. Yet for every moment of beauty, there was a lively chaos. Children dodging carts, yelling merchants, and the rich, bitter scent of coffee mingling with the tang of fresh bread. This was a city steeped in history, and its stories beckoned to Alexios like a siren's call, tempting him to dive deeper into its waters of wisdom. One day, as the golden rays of the sun slanted through the market square, Alexios stumbled upon an elderly philosopher named Sophia, whose silver hair seemed to glow against the backdrop of the vibrant colors surrounding them. She wore wisdom like an eccentric cape, twisting tales of ancient emperors and fierce battles, as if they were the yarns of a bard right out of a medieval fantasy, the kind that would make even George R.R. Martin drop his quill in envy. With every word, Sophia unlocked layers of Byzantine history, each tale richer than the last, filled with intrigue, betrayal, and the occasional absurdity, like a court lady wrestling a goose for the last morsel of royal pastries. Alexios, wide-eyed and enthralled, felt gateways opening in his mind, pouring with knowledge of an empire once feared and revered, its beauty and brutality intertwined in a complicated dance. They met often, Sophia employing her spirited humor to paint vibrant pictures, and Alexios scribbling furiously, desperate to capture every pearl of wisdom. Yet, as Alexios delved deeper into the lore of Byzantium, an unsettling shadow loomed over this golden age. Whispers of war began to swirl like the impending storm clouds on the horizon, a grim reminder that the serenity of the city could be upturned at any moment. The clamor of soldiers marching, the resonating clang of metal against metal, was a jarring contrast to the lively philosophy discussions that had become Alexios's sanctuary. It seemed as if the very walls of the city breathed ominously, and the vibrant colors around him began to dull in anticipation of bloodshed. Amidst the chaos, he couldn't help but feel that for every brilliant thought shared with Sophia, a small piece of Byzantine culture was slipping through his fingers like grains of sand, an irony he watched unfold as he sought to preserve what was vibrant and living. As nights fell and the distant sounds of battle echoed in his ears, Alexios's resolve solidified. It wasn't enough to be a passive viewer of history. He felt the call to action deep within his bones. Armed with parchment and ink, he set out on a quest, not to seek glory or titles, but to document the beauty, the philosophy, and the unique cultural threads that made up the fabric of Byzantine life. He envisioned himself as an unlikely hero, a scholarly Indiana Jones, donning not a fedora, but a worn cap, dodging metaphorical boulders of war to preserve what he loved. Each stroke of his quill was a promise, a defiance against the encroaching shadows, a way to encapsulate history in vibrant detail so that future generations could see and feel the pulse of an empire even as it trembled. Through the pages of history he created, Alexios climbed the towering heights of hope, believing that stories have power to inspire, to ignite passion, and to connect hearts across time. Even if the empire crumbled, its echoes would linger through the words he penned, breathless and floating like ghosts across the generations. He felt the weight of the world on his shoulders, one scholar's pen battling against the impending chaos. It's a bit like trying to keep a souffle from collapsing while taking a selfie, harder than it looks. As the impending threat loomed ever closer, Alexios understood the true significance of his mission: to be a beacon in the storm, allowing the light of Byzantine culture to shine through even the darkest of times. And so, his quest was not just a search for knowledge, but a fight for legacy, a stance against the cacophony of despair that threatened to engulf everything he had come to treasure. Gather round, dear listeners, as we turn our gaze to the heart of Constantinople, where the scent of incense mingles with the salty tang of the nearby Bosporus. It's a city buzzing with scholarly fervor, caught in a tempest of ideas and ideals, in the shadow of crumbling stone walls and ancient mosaics. Alexios and Sophia rally a motley crew of like-minded scholars. Picture them as a band of history avengers, armed with scrolls and quills, determined to save their beloved Byzantine heritage from the clutches of oblivion. The air is thick with the weight of their mission, a palpable tension that can almost be tasted, like a spoonful of sour grape must left too long in the sun. Yet as the days wear on, the threats mounting against them grow louder, rival factions prowling like wolves, eager to erase the very essence of Byzantium. These opponents are less concerned with cultural preservation and more with wielding power like a sledgehammer to a house of cards. The scholarly gatherings turn into hushed whispers, nervous glances darting about like fireflies on a summer night, each scholar acutely aware of the looming threat outside. Alexios, once buoyant and fiery, now feels as if he's wading through a marsh of doubt. The chaos swirling around him feels like the soundtrack of a post-apocalyptic film. In this whirlwind of uncertainty, Sophia emerges as a beacon of hope, her voice a soothing balm amidst the chaos. Remember, she tells Alexios, heritage is not just a relic, but a catalyst. It has the power to inspire revolutions. With each word, she spins tales of past glories, like a bard weaving the hero's journey, noble victories, epic battles, and the beauty of resilience that runs through their veins. It's almost cinematic, and Alexios can almost hear the score swell as he leans into her conviction. Feeling the cracks in his resolve begin to mend, he lets the warmth of her faith seep into his weary bones, a refreshing tonic against despair. Outside, the clamor of war drums beats a relentless rhythm, punctuated by the cries of distant battles. The streets of Constantinople echo with the clash of metal as armored men prepare for conflict. The smell of sweat mingling with the pungent odor of charred wood. Paradoxically, amidst this impending chaos, Alexios finds inspiration. The artists he gathers around him work feverishly, their brush strokes etching stories of Byzantium against the canvas of destruction. It's both ironic and heartbreakingly beautiful. Their commitment stands in stark contrast to the looming shadows of censorship and cultural annihilation. Here, they transform fear into art, a Juliet and her Romeo, hiding in the pages of history, while lovers outside lament their fate. As the night deepens and the flickering flames of their lamps cast dancing shadows on the walls, this band of scholars clings to their mission. Together, they scribble furiously, pouring their knowledge into manuscripts that echo with the wisdom of their ancestors, the power to preserve, to push back against the tide of chaos, ignites like a spark in their chests, a hope that refuses to be extinguished. No matter how fierce the winds of war may howl, and just when doubt threatens to choke the life out of their ambitions, Sophia's laughter rings out, bright and defiant, reminding them that even in the darkest of days, heritage will always whisper back, "We are here, and we will not be silenced." As the sun dipped behind the jagged hills of the Italian landscape, Alexios and his motley crew of scholars trundled along the cobblestone streets, their satchels brimming with scrolls and artifacts that smelled faintly of age and ink. The air shimmered with the heat of summer, and the thrumming pulse of bustling taverns mingled with the distant tolling of church bells. They wore expressions more akin to that of ragtag adventurers than learned men, dodging angry chickens and even angrier market vendors as they spread the gospel of Byzantine culture. Each stop was a new theater of chaos, where the echoes of Byzantine art and philosophy were met with skepticism, and sometimes outright hostility. A bit like trying to pitch a vegan lifestyle in medieval France. Let's be honest, still, determination mingled with apprehension, their shared mission burning brighter than any torch they carried along the winding roads of Western Europe. My, oh my, did things take a turn when they rolled into a border town in the heart of the empire's mightiest rival. The locals eyed them like a pack of hungry wolves spying on a flock of sheep. Suspicion thick enough to slice, tensions crackled in the air like an overzealous magician's trick gone wrong. 1 minute, they were sharing tales of the divine mosaics of Hagia Sophia, and the next, they were dodging spit, curses, and slightly overripe tomatoes. But Alexios had more than a few clever tricks up his sleeve, dazzling the townsfolk with stories of Byzantine philosophical debates that made even the most hardened skeptic raise an eyebrow, and perhaps even a hint of curiosity. Winning them over felt like convincing a cat to take a bath. But he forged ahead like a true hero, weaving tales that trickled like honey into their hardened hearts. However, within the growing fellowship lurked shadows deeper than the dungeons of Cæsar's imagination. Among the scholars, one person's allegiance faltered like an old friend struggling to show up at a potluck. Betrayal became the uninvited guest at their gathering, creeping in and whispering sweet lies that sent ripples of distrust through the group. Just when it seemed they could see the horizon shimmering with golden prospects of cross-cultural exchange, a dagger, both literal and figurative, threatened to tear their dreams apart. Through a mysterious letter shared with the local lord, their plans were laid bare, and the very foundation of their quest began to crumble like ancient ruins underfoot. As the tension thickened, the atmosphere crackled with irony. Here they were, advocating unity through shared culture, while struggling to keep their own unity intact. Yet, through all the chaos, it turned out the human spirit's resilience, often coupled with laughter, like an old buddy film you didn't know you needed. With a newfound urgency, Alexios motivated the group, reminding them of the warmth of Byzantine artistry, the intricate filigree that overflowed with stories waiting to be told. As they huddled in the shadow of a crumbling fortress, swaddled in the scent of fresh-baked bread wafting from the nearby stalls, they realized they could still inspire hope, igniting a curiosity in hearts that had only known the cold. Like planting seeds in rocky soil, their efforts began to push through, slowly but stubbornly growing in the cracks of doubt and betrayal that surrounded them. At last, with their spirits buoyed by a renewed sense of purpose, the group soldiered on, collecting ardent admirers and curious onlookers in every new town they encountered. They showed off Byzantine art that dazzled eyes and philosophy that made heads spin faster than a whirling dervish at a dance-off. Each mural, painted in vibrant colors, spoke of a shared past that transcended borders, melting the icy veneer of suspicion. When Alexios pointed to the elegance of archways inspired by divine geometry, people began to feel the warmth of the Byzantine legacy infiltrate their hardened hearts, spreading like the scent of fresh pastries on a Sunday morn. As they pressed on, something innate began to click within the cultures they touched, and a mosaic of appreciation took shape, a tapestry stitched with echoes of an empire that refused to fade. The grand hall buzzed with a palpable tension, reminiscent of a fire-scorched battlefield where ideas became the weapons of choice. Alexios stood poised at the front, a stalwart figure draped in rich, embroidered silks that mirrored the splendor of the Byzantine Empire. As he gazed upon the assembled crowd, ranging from scribes clutching scrolls like lifelines to artists wielding brushes as if they could paint the future, an electric anticipation thickened the air. Through the open window, the scent of herbs and grilled meats wafted in from the marketplace, blending oddly with the dusty aroma of old books and parchment. This was no ordinary gathering. It was a defining moment where philosophy squared off against fanatical ignorance, and Alexios was resolved to champion the beauty of their heritage, no matter the cost. Sophia, the brilliant philosopher and Alexios's muse, commanded attention with a voice that danced through the hall like fireflies in the night. She stood gracefully beside him, radiating confidence, as if she had just stepped out of one of the great works of Plato. Ideas are like emperors, reigning supreme without the need for swords, she proclaimed, her eyes glimmering with passion. The crowd erupted in applause, and even the most cynical skeptics found themselves nodding along as she wove her arguments with a blend of intricate logic and fervent conviction. One could almost hear the laughter echoing from the past, as if Aristotle and Socrates were joining in, chuckling at the ideas, struggling to break free into the light from the cobwebs of apathy and ignorance. As the debate raged on, it took on the guise of an epic duel, words flying like arrows between the loyal defenders of culture and the hostile opposition. The adversaries, clad in tattered robes and mocking smirks, hurled barbs like seasoned jesters attempting to steal the show. Each retort from the audience stung their pride, echoing back the wit and wisdom of countless generations that craved enlightenment over darkness. It was a strange battlefield, where the only blood spilled was that of bruised egos, and laughter mingled with the earnest sighs of those who longed for a brighter future. The merchants outside hawked their wares, blissfully oblivious to the intellectual showdown happening just beyond their stalls, where the stakes were nothing less than the survival of a legacy that stood firm against the encroaching shadows. In the midst of this lively clash, Alexios turned his attention to the splendors of Byzantine culture. The intricate mosaics depicting stories that shimmered like starlit constellations, and the majestic architecture that reached toward the heavens, daring to challenge the clouds themselves. He painted with words the genius of scholars, the creativity of artisans, and the rich spice of convictions that made their society vibrate with life. Each description fanned the flames of inspiration in his audience, turning their collective yearning for knowledge into a potent force. Sophia, not to be outdone, chimed in with metaphors as colorful as a Byzantine tapestry, drawing parallels between the philosophical pursuits of their ancestors and the unyielding resolve of the present. Indeed, they were all part of an unbreakable chain stretching across time, each link forged with sweat, wisdom, and an unquenchable thirst for progress. As the final arguments echoed like a victory cry, the hall erupted in a fierce applause that trembled the very foundations of their resolve. In that moment of triumph, amidst the sea of faces glistening with hope, Alexios felt a surge of victory, not just for himself, but for every thinker, artist, and dreamer who ever dared to push back against the tide of ignorance. The air was thick with the smell of resolve and ambition, leaving a sweet aftertaste reminiscent of conquering a behemoth with nothing but the power of thought. Twilight set in, casting golden hues through the stained glass, softening the edges of their earlier fears. Outside, the town thrummed with life, a testament to their belief that ideas, once kindled, could spark revolutions far beyond their imaginations. Just like a series finale that leaves you breathless, waiting for the next season of enlightenment to begin. As the dust settled on the battlefield, Alexios stood amidst a kaleidoscope of European cities, each one a living testament to Byzantine brilliance. The streets bustled with merchants hawking spices and textiles, their fragrances twisting in the air like dancers at a feast. It was a blend of sights so vivid that even a Renaissance artist would have struggled to capture its vibrancy. The gold-domed churches gleamed like sunlight on a cobalt sea, while the laughter of children played like music behind the chatter of scholars. He could practically hear the echoes of past scholars debating philosophy in marketplaces, their animated voices competing with the sizzle of fresh bread coming from nearby ovens. In short, it was a glorious cacophony of life, a sensory overload that said, yes, we survived. In every possible way, the Renaissance, fueled by Byzantine wisdom, was not just a revival. It felt more like a culinary renaissance, a hearty stew simmering with spices from the east and flavors from the west. Scholars scribbled furiously, blending ancient Greek texts with fresh Latin, creating a rich intellectual broth that nourished thirsty minds. It was as if they had discovered the missing ingredient to life. Community. Coffee house conversations popped up like wildflowers, with everyone from poets to philosophers tossing around ideas like confetti. Irony dripped from these gatherings, where once divided cultures shared laughter and learning over steaming mugs, crafting a culture that was as nourishing and warm as the finest cup of Turkish coffee. Yet underneath the surface of this vibrant tapestry lay threads of tension and conflict, the kind that could make a great drama on HBO. While cultural exchange blossomed, ancient rivalries simmered just beneath the surface, like a pot threatening to boil over. Every beautiful mosaic, every page of flourishing calligraphy served as both a celebration of unity and a reminder of the past scars left by invasions and conquests. Alexios chuckled to himself at the absurdity. Wouldn't it be something if they could summon the ghosts of their ancestors, who traded swords for paintbrushes and spears for script, and tell them they were now collaborating on art rather than battlegrounds. An artist with a paintbrush is mightier than a warrior with a sword, he mused, grinning at the image of a team of disgruntled warriors begrudgingly sharing a canvas in a back alley somewhere as architects reimagined Byzantine forms. The skyline transformed, soaring arches reached for the heavens, as if trying to summon angels, while intricate carvings awed those who gazed upon them. The rich tapestries, woven with tales of gods and heroes, danced in shops like they were trying to sell the very air. Each element bore the fingerprints of a culture that had dedicated itself to aesthetic perfection. Living art pulsing with history and individual stories, the smell of fresh paint wafted through the air, mingling with the scent of honest sweat from laborers who worked tirelessly, pouring their hearts into their crafts. In these moments, Alexios realized that the legacy of Byzantium was not merely confined to books and art, but was alive, vibrating like a finely tuned string waiting to strike a chord. And so, as Alexios took a deep breath, he felt the pulse of history coursing through the veins of these cities, a symbiotic relationship of cultures intertwined. The echo of Byzantium rang through literature, philosophy, and art, crafting a legacy that would not only survive, but thrive far beyond its time. He laughed softly, imagining future historians trying to label this intricate dance of cultures like it was simply another episode of a long-running soap opera. Yet, here it was, a harmonious symphony of human spirit, a reminder that when we blend our histories, instead of battling for supremacy, we become something greater than the sum of our parts, a thriving, messy, and beautiful world. As he surveyed this European landscape, Alexios couldn't help but muse. What's next? A dance-off with the Ottomans? Ah, history, ever hilarious in its twists and turns. In the vibrant heart of Chang'an, the air buzzed with the sounds of haggling voices and laughter, spices wafting through the streets like an aromatic whisper, inviting passers-by to explore. Stalls overflowed with silks shimmering in the sunlight, their colors rivaling the brightest rainbows, while merchants passionately pitched their wares. Among them stood Li Wei, a young silk merchant with dreams as vast as the sky above. He envisioned the lands beyond his familiar horizon, a world where the mountains touch the heavens and rivers spill secrets of ancient civilizations. Each time the wind rustled through the marketplace, it felt like a call to adventure, tantalizing, and just out of reach, as if the universe was teasing him to take a leap of faith into the unknown. One fine morning, as the sun cast golden rays across the bustling market, Li Wei's path crossed with that of an enigmatic traveler named Amina. Dressed in a flowing cloak adorned with intricate patterns, she carried an aura of mystery that intrigued him as much as her tales of far-off lands. Li Wei listened, eyes wide, as she spoke of the treasures of the Silk Road, silk that shone like moonlight, spices that danced on the palate, and cultures that thrived in a riot of colors and sounds. Her words painted images more vivid than any tapestry he could ever sell. And in a moment of sheer spontaneity, they promised to join forces on a journey that would reshape their destinies. It was as if the universe had conspired, nudging them along with a gentle push toward the heart of adventure. With determination burning in their hearts, Li Wei and Amina began plotting their journey with the precision of seasoned adventurers, despite their novice status. They gathered supplies, a mix of exotic spices, enough dried fruit to fuel an army, and of course, meticulously packed bolts of silk, just in case they stumbled upon a market or two. The thrill of the unknown filled the air around them like the heady scent of fresh jasmine, eclipsing any worries they held. Their laughter echoed off the surrounding stalls, drowning out the busy clamor of Chang'an as they spoke of dream destinations where legends and realities intertwined like the threads of a tapestry. Neither of them knew the challenges ahead, but the allure of the Silk Road was a siren's song, promising wonder and discovery at every turn. As their journey commenced, the weight of departure hung heavy on their shoulders, a bittersweet farewell to the familiar chaos of the marketplace. They stepped away from the comfort of home and into the dusty embrace of the road, each footfall stirring up dreams as much as it stirred up sand. With each passing night under starlit skies, conversations flowed like the rivers they crossed, filled with dreams of what lay ahead, traders from far-off lands, the warmth of friendship forged by shared struggles, and the intoxicating mix of laughter and uncertainty. They swapped stories around flickering campfires, their marinated hopes mingling with the crackling flames, signaling the start of a staggering voyage. It was a serendipitous blend of joy and trepidation. Could they really conquer the world and its merciless deserts? Or were they chasing phantoms in the night? Their escapades brought challenges galore, as the road unfolded like a scroll of ancient tales, navigating treacherous mountain passes and crossing rivers that roared like dragons, spitting forth not just stories, but also the occasional misstep that left them drenched and grinning. Each encounter with different cultures added another layer to their friendship, as they exchanged and adapted customs like characters in a whimsical sitcom, complete with miscommunication and comic relief that would have made even the toughest general crack a smile. Every village welcomed them with open arms, yielding feasts that delighted their taste buds and dances that ignited their souls. Yet, as they journeyed, it became clear that they weren't merely trading silk or spices. They were weaving together the very fabric of their beings, shaped by a tapestry of ideas, laughter, and an adventure that none would forget. And little did they know that this was just the beginning of a saga that would bridge worlds, cultures, and ultimately their own hearts as the sun blazed high in the sky, turning the endless expanse of the Taklamakan Desert into a shimmering mirage. Li Wei and Amina squinted against the glaring light. The heat wafted off the golden sands like an overdone barbecue, and the air felt thick enough to slice with a knife. They trudged on, the silent dunes whispering ancient secrets, tales of caravans that had danced across this ancient route. But they were not alone. The soft crunch of sand beneath their feet was punctuated by distant laughter and the clattering of camels. Here, the Silk Road was alive, a swirling confluence of languages and accents, with traders weaving stories as vibrant as the textiles they sold. As they pushed deeper into the heart of the desert, the beauty of this desolate land was occasionally shattered by the sudden fury of a sandstorm. It was like nature's version of a surprise party, albeit one where the confetti was tiny, stinging grains that felt more like tiny daggers than festive joy. Li Wei found himself struggling to keep his footing, eyes squinted shut, muttering under his breath about needing a nap. No one told him an adventure would come with such uninvited weather. Amina laughed, her voice cutting through the chaos. At least we won't have to worry about our hairstyles. Even the raging storm couldn't dampen their spirits for long, turning fret into laughter as they stumbled forth like enthusiastic waders in the world's largest sandbox. After hours of battling the elements, they stumbled across a hidden oasis, a lush breath of life amid the unforgiving landscape. It was a shimmering pool, surrounded by proud palm trees swaying gently as if sharing an inside joke. The air was rich with the scent of fig and jasmine, a fragrant reminder that beauty could arise even in harsh surroundings. As they shared a meal with a group of friendly traders, the clinking of metal spoons and the laughter echoed off the palm fronds like music in the middle of nowhere. Stories flowed from mouth to mouth, each one more outrageous than the last, with one trader claiming to have once sold a magical fish that granted wishes. Or was it just a really big catfish? It was hard to tell after a few bowls of fragrant rice, but true to the Silk Road's unpredictable fashion, their respite was soon interrupted by a group of rugged nomads who appeared like shadows cast by the sun set low on the horizon. Their presence loomed with an aura of both mystery and wariness, shrouded in layers of weather-beaten cloth that could tell 1,000 stories by themselves. "What do you want?" Li Wei and Amina. One of the nomads queried, his voice like gravel, punctuating the atmosphere with calculated curiosity. It was as if they had just crashed an elite club meeting, with secret handshakes and whispered passwords. With a mix of trepidation and intrigue, our travelers explained their mission, feeling oddly like characters in a poorly scripted buddy cop movie, trying to persuade the local tough guys that they weren't there to cause trouble. Yet, ever the wild card, the Silk Road proved it could tempt fate just when they thought they had found their footing. Under the cloak of night, and as the stars twinkled like 1,000 winking eyes, bandits descended. The sounds of scuffles filled the air, and the taste of adrenaline mixed with the sharp tang of fear. Amina, channeling her inner superhero, swung a hefty bag of traitor spices at one thief, who stumbled back as if hit by Thor's hammer. And Li Wei, proving the adage that not all heroes wear capes, swung his walking stick with the grace of a startled llama. Together, they navigated chaos and hurdles, finding that their friendship shone brightest in moments when the odds stacked heavily against them. With laughter and a bit of clever maneuvering, they emerged from the tussle not just intact, but with stories that would last a lifetime, ready for the next wild tales along the Silk Road. In the heart of Samarkand's bazaar, the air buzzed with a cacophony of voices, bartering haggles, and the chime of brass bells. Li Wei and Amina stepped into a kaleidoscope of color, where merchants displayed their treasures like a peacock, flaunting its plumage, silks that shimmered like moonlight, spices that perfumed the air with exotic scents, and jewels that sparkled like stars on the darkest nights. The mingling aromas of saffron and roasted lamb wafted through the stalls, wrapping around them like a warm embrace. It was a sensory overload, each face in the crowd telling stories of far-off lands and adventures that made Li Wei's heart race with excitement. "Welcome to the bazaar," Amina exclaimed, half laughing, half gawking as a goat bleated loudly nearby, vying for attention amidst the vibrant chaos of humanity. As they ventured deeper, the duo found themselves enveloped in the warmth of camaraderie shared by traders who were masters of both commerce and culture. "Did you see that fellow negotiate 3 goats and a jug of honey for a single silk robe?" Li Wei chuckled, shaking his head, marveling at the audacity of the trades. Traders, like wily magicians, spun tales to weave their deals, proving that a good story could indeed be as valuable as gold. And just like a plot twist in their favorite epic stories, they began to understand that entrepreneurs here knew no borders. They traded not just goods, but ideas, dreams, and sometimes recipes for the best kebabs. They saw a man from Persia gesturing passionately about astronomy while sealing a deal for spices from India, illustrating the rich tapestry of knowledge hanging in the air, like the vibrant tapestries lining the stalls. However, as delightful as the bazaar was, dark shadows lurked among the vibrancy. Li Wei and Amina soon overheard whispers about rival factions poised to clash, their voices low and menacing, like the rumble of thunder before a storm. I feel like we're the stars in a drama where no one told us the script. Li Wei quipped nervously, glancing over his shoulder at a group of traders with narrowed eyes. The safe, welcoming environment morphed into a minefield of tension, where trust diminished like sugar dissolving in tea. Every corner seemed to harbor secrets that could turn allies into enemies faster than you could say. Bizarre brawl. The atmosphere thickened with apprehension. Each stall felt like a precarious balancing act on a tightrope strung above a pit of snakes. As evening approached, the bazaar transformed. The golden glow of oil lamps flickered to life, shooting sparks into the air like fireflies on a summer night. But amid the enchantment, Liu Wei sensed the unease in Amina's posture, her bright spirit dimming as factions exchanged glances laden with unspoken threats. They found a quiet corner amidst the clamor, where the chatter faded into a low hum, where they could plot their next move. We need to find a way to dance through these troubles before we end up stepping on the wrong toes. Or worse, he said, half joking to mask his growing concern, determined to navigate the tempestuous waters. Li Wei and Amina donned their best poker faces as they mingled among traders, seeking allies while keeping an ear to the ground. The bazaar thrummed with life, but as tensions simmered, it became clear that cooperation was essential, like oil to a well-oiled machine. Remember, even the greatest heroes need a band of merry misfits, or they risk turning into a tragedy, Amina whispered, as they ducked under a tapestry depicting the legendary Silk Road. It was a whimsical thought amid the chaos, but amidst friendships forged and alliances built, they gradually realized that even in the bazaar's heart, stories could unite even the most rivalrous of factions. And as the distant drums of evening echoed, so too did a sense of sheer adventure, charged with the promise of danger and opportunity that only the bazaar could offer. In a grand pavilion draped with silk curtains that shimmered like the scales of a dragon, the air buzzed with the chatter of merchants and dignitaries, each one decked out in enough jewels to make a pirate's chest look bare. The scent of spiced lamb skewers and fragrant tea wafted through the space, tempting even the most stoic diplomat to indulge in a little culinary mischief. But this wasn't just a feast. It was a powder keg of tension, ready to explode. On one side, the proud traders of the East waved their banners emblazoned with phoenixes, while from the West, the merchants of the Silk Road held banners of lions, each side glaring daggers at the other, ready to battle over profits like children fighting over a toy. Dramatic, right? But the stakes were higher than just ego and gold. The very future of trade hung in the balance, waiting for the right voice to tilt the scales toward harmony or chaos. And then entered our heroes, Li Wei and Amina, as if they were the main characters in a historical epic. With a tempestuous energy that could rival a summer storm, they strode to the center of the pavilion, their hearts racing as they drew the gazes of everyone present. Amina, with her hope shining brighter than her silken garments, addressed the crowd, her voice cutting through the din like a sword through paper. Why bicker over spices and silk when we can barter our wisdom and strength instead? She implored, her words wrapping around the audience like a warm embrace. You could practically feel the room lean in, some even clutching their scrolls, ready to capture a new dream, as animated exchanges unfolded in the flickering candlelight around them. Li Wei, not to be outdone by his spirited counterpart, took a deep breath and threw his arms out wide, inviting the crowd into his vision. Imagine a Silk Road where merchants don't just exchange goods, but stories, ideas, and culture, like a potluck where everyone brings their most flavorful dish. The laughter that erupted was infectious, lightening the mood as the tension began to simmer down. Aroma of roasted chestnuts danced through the air, mingling with the freshness of the late autumn breeze wafting through the pavilion. He passionately painted a picture of collaboration, where East met West, not as adversaries, but as partners in a bountiful banquet of trade. It was the ultimate Team USA moment, except instead of dodging basketballs, they were all dodging daggers of animosity with a shared vision of unity. As their words hung like ripe fruit in the air, the merchants began to exchange glances, their expressions shifting as if they were trying on a new revelatory cloak. It was as if the pavilion itself held its breath, waiting for the verdict from this assembly of titans, warriors cloaked in fine fabrics, but with hearts longing for peace. Some traders nodded thoughtfully, while others squinted like they were trying to read the fine print on a contract nobody understood. The initial snickers of disbelief turned into murmurs of curiosity. The potential for an alliance started to glimmer like golden coins catching the sun. The thought was revolutionary. Why not build bridges, literal and metaphoric, instead of walls? You could almost hear a collective eureka ringing out among the crowd as the delegates mingled and exchanged ideas. Li Wei and Amina stood side by side, their mission accomplished, albeit a bit disheveled by the whirlwind of emotions and back and forth of the impending alliance. The laughter, debates, and shared visions echoed in their ears. The pavilion transformed from a battleground to a canvas of possibility. Imagine the Silk Road, bustling like a dance hall, where every trader became a storyteller, weaving in tales as rich as the spices they traded. As the crowd began to surge toward each other, shaking hands and exchanging goods, unlikely allies bound by a singular dream. Our dynamic duo shared a quiet smile, who knew that beneath all that rivalry, a thriving ecosystem of trade, culture, and camaraderie could blossom like cherry trees in full bloom. Russia and America, take note, this is how you craft diplomacy out of prosperity and silk. The sun broke over the bustling bazaar like a golden yolk cracking open, painting the sky with hues of pink and orange. In the midst of the early morning chaos, vendors shouted their wares, the air thick with the savory scents of sizzling dumplings, and roasted meats mingled with the sharp tang of spices. Li Wei and Amina, their cheeks smeared with traces of street food, stood at the heart of this vivid tapestry, absorbing the laughter and chatter around them. It was a moment pregnant with promise, the kind of feeling you get when you know something monumental is about to happen, like the first time someone shows you how to swipe right on a dating app. Here, amidst the cacophony of cultures, they could sense the winds of change blowing through the Silk Road, whispering tales of unity and cooperation that would ripple across nations like the waves from a well-aimed rock tossed into a pond. As the day wore on, Li Wei and Amina reveled in the newfound camaraderie between diverse peoples. They watched as traders from the far-flung corners of the empire exchanged not only goods, but also philosophies and dreams, each story weaving a richer fabric of understanding. Rubber chickens swooped through the air as a juggler flailed comedian style, his antics drawing laughter from all around, a bizarre sight that perfectly echoed the blend of cultures harmonizing in this bustling thoroughfare. With each exchange, they could almost hear the creaking of the old ideas being tossed out, making room for bold new thoughts. Here in the bazaar, it was not just about coin and commerce. It was about hearts and minds daring to leap across chasms of ignorance, much like Amina's leap over a puddle, her laughter ringing clear as a bell in a quiet chapel. As evening approached, a deep, warm light washed over the square, transforming the vibrant colors of the bazaar into soft hues of twilight. Li Wei and Amina found themselves seated on a cobbled stone, sharing a meal with a motley crew of travelers, each with tales that transported them to realms far beyond their own. The fragrant steam rising from bowls of noodle soup danced with the mesmerizing mix of wood smoke and laughter, creating an atmosphere that was nothing short of magic. It felt like they were part of a grand movie, with each story being a scene, a montage of micro-adventures threading together the lives of people who should have been strangers, but instead felt like long-lost family. They borrowed ideas for recipes, swapped remedies for common travel woes, and even discussed bizarre superstitions, giggling as they caricatured their absurdity, like a sitcom meeting Indiana Jones in a parallel universe. But as with all good things, the time came for Li Wei and Amina to return to their home in Chang'an. The pulse of the silk rode slowly fading into the backdrop of memory. They packed their belongings, their spirits buoyed by the friendship forged under the open skies, but weighed down by the bittersweet ache of departure. Each step away from the bazaar felt like pulling a bandage off, stinging yet necessary. They carried stories, the kind that challenge the status quo, of resilience and connection, that could light a fire in anyone's heart, reigniting dreams that may have flickered out like an old lantern in a forgotten corner. With every thread of their narrative, they hoped to weave a tapestry of inspiration for those still dreaming of distant shores, smuggling passion and possibility in their hearts. As they traversed back to Chang'an, laughter echoed through the mountain passes, an ironic reminder of both the weight of what they carried and the lightness in their souls. Li Wei joked about how their tales would surely turn into exaggerated legends, like how Amina single-handedly outsmarted a gang of bandits, armed only with a spatula. But in truth, they both felt a heavy responsibility for the stories now bouncing around their heads like popcorn in a hot pan. These were not just fantastical accounts. They were seeds of change that could grow into mighty oaks of understanding among their people. Arriving home at last, their hearts full, they knew they hadn't just traveled to far-off lands. They had expanded the very fabric of their world, a history woven with companionship, one colorful thread at a time.